Is it possible there was a writing within the Qumran Bethabara community that identifies Yahusha and his crucifixion, or really execution? Yes, we prove that is the place where Yahusha was baptized, right? Bethabara. We show you with maps and everything in the original canon series, as well as in the introduction of our books. So don't even think about debating that. Here, our channel, our rules. No debate in ignorance. You have to know our position first before you try to take a position against what you don't even know. There you go. But could it be? Well, if one is not looking for it, as, well, scholars aren't, they remain clueless on just about everything in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that's sad, but so true, and we prove it over and over again. Committing really one of the biggest frauds in history. The whole Dead Sea Scroll malfunction of what they call scholarship is really, truly utter fraud. So, yeah, they don't find it, and we're not surprised, because it's right there, sitting on top of their nose. And what do? Well, first they screw up the date in a false science that guesses at a date. Yeah, that's what they do. They don't actually test many times, carbon dating. But even if they did, there's still a margin of error that could take it into the next century. So it really doesn't tell you anything when you're thinking about trying to nail it down to a very, very specific era of, 30, 40 years. Literally impossible to do so, and it's okay. We don't have to. That's the whole thing. It's the demand for such that science doesn't even have to support it, that it's just ludicrous. Stop demanding things, right? That's what we should do. Stop demanding things that man can't even date and can't even do anyway. Pretty easy. They forget, as Giza Verms will show you does, and we'll show you that the, Greek Empire, already ended, and he's talking about, Greek emperors in terms of this, which makes no sense. Wait till you see the commentary from that guy. You will probably not be shocked if you watch this channel, but most would otherwise. And they forget to read the text, which, actually dates itself. Duh. Really? Yeah, it's that simple. I cannot imagine anything more fraudulent in representation than the lousy Rockefeller-funded propagandists who are managing the Dead Sea Scrolls. They are awful. Which, by the way, is a New Testament community and find, not a Jewish or Pharisee one. As they were the enemies of the Dead Sea Scroll community and of Yahusha, who launched his ministry there and not the Jerusalem temple they had already defiled. You got to be kidding me that they would allow this, yet the church is not just silent. They're just, stupid. Because they just stand up and read for themselves? No, they can't. They just take these guys' opinions on everything. The opinions of fools, the blind leading the blind. Well, we will not on this channel, and it's time to end this. What we found today is incredible. View it for yourself, test it for yourself, check it out. Here we go. From the commentary on Nahum, let's get right to it. We'll vet the dating too, don't worry, we're going to get there. But right now, they assume, and yes, I mean assume, because they don't know and they're guessing. It's not a scientific dating, not this figure. But sometime between 50 and 1 BC, this was written. Maybe, sorta, kinda, if, yeah. No, that is not the date, and even the margin of error includes Yahusha's sacrifice, so it wouldn't matter. However, no one can seem to think over there at the Dead Sea Scroll, library, the Leon Levy Library, all of it, the Rockefeller-funded disaster of interpretation. At least we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. At least some of the translations are okay. But their interpretations, these guys are idiots. Sorry, but that's what we find. Now, when they do things like that, they set borders around reason, and that's what they're doing on purpose, of course, to control the narrative. Blind scholars who follow their intentional blindness, well, they're just as bad. They tried to rule out 30 or so years later, of course. Why? Well, because that would be Messiah in this text. And, of course, that couldn't possibly be because, well, they hate him. What do you expect? What are they doing? Managing the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are all about him. That's the real question. Now, problem, we ain't fallen for any more of this ridiculous leaven. Let's test this now. And chokes prey for its lioness, and it fills its caves with prey and its dens with victims. This is Nahum 2, I think 12a and b. Now, what they do, as we've covered many times in the Dead Sea Scroll community, is these exiled temple priests, legitimate keepers of Bible canon and teachers of it, they then say, interpret it, right? So this is what we'd call commentary, but this is valid commentary from the only keepers of Scripture to the first century. This matters most. So, by the Qumran Bethabar priests, you know, the ones endorsed by Yahusha, who launched his ministry there, and not the Jerusalem temple. That said a lot right there. Huge statement. This concerns the furious young lion. That's singular, notice. Now, it's not Yahusha. We know that he can be referred to as a lion as well in prophecy, but that's not what this is. This is very clear. This is a furious young lion who's doing some bad stuff here. So, this is Pontius Pilate, very obviously. I mean, anybody can read this, even at first blush, and really kind of almost see this, but hopefully you will now. Note there is only one furious young lion there, not multiple, it's not lions. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many commentaries are just that stupid that they go there, and they forget that it just says lion. Yeah, good job. And notice we have brackets here as we move forward. Now, what does that mean? It means they added this part to the sentence, to the translation. It's not actually there. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that if it's logical, reasonable, and they're not just throwing in something to basically change the whole doctrine of the passage. Oh, oops, that's what they're doing in blatant fraud. Let's see. So it says, who executes revenge. So this furious young lion executes revenge. Okay, you could say that about Pontius Pilate. I mean, you could, but are you kidding? The guy washed his hands. He tried not. He tried to say no. No, the Pharisees twisted his arm. He wasn't exactly the one executing revenge, other than for them. But here's how it reads. Who executes revenge, what they're trying to do is set up the Pharisees as the persecuted here. Because those poor Pharisees, I mean, you know, they were just trying to kill a man. What's wrong with that? Right, okay. What it really should say is something more like, on behalf of, okay, not who executes revenge. Nonsense. On those who seek smooth things. Now that, as we've covered many times before, and certainly in our original canon series, that is always a connotation in the Qumran scrolls of the Pharisees and Sanhedrin. They're the ones who seek smooth things in Jerusalem. They run the worship system, seeking smooth things. They like to dull things down, right? Because they're the blind leading the blind, said Yahusha, if you believe him, of course. So that's very clear and not debatable. They are the ones who usurped the priesthood in Jerusalem, which several of these commentaries, even in Nahum, Habakkuk, and different books, identify very clearly. Now, we've covered that in our original canon series in detail, those passages, so go check it out, especially who defiled the temple. There is also a chart of Pharisee fruits for Messiah's words, and from the community there in Qumran of the temple priests that were exiled there, and what they have to say about Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, and none of it is good. Now, those are their words, not ours. And we put that in the front of most of our books. And hangs men alive. So he hangs men. How's he hang men? Well, on a tree, you're going to see. So this is referring to what we call crucifixion, though that's not really the accurate way to use the term staros. Watch the Greek stake and watch the cross. Those videos really expose that thinking. So who does the hanging here? The furious young lion, Pontius Pilate, does. He's the executioner. Then it says, formerly in Israel. So this fragment is written when? After the event. Because it's talking about something that was formerly there and formerly happened. Duh. And this text really dates itself. Because of a man. Okay, one man. There's only one to which this could even refer, in fact. And that's Yahusha, you'll see. One man, okay, because of a man hanged alive on the tree, he proclaims, behold, I am against you, says Yahuwah of hosts. Wow. Now, let's break this down because there's actually a lot there to unpack. And by the end of this short video, you're going to understand it and, again, test it for yourself. First, notice this man, as Peter and Luke affirm, was hanged on a tree. We know that is scripture. That is a biblical way to identify Yahusha. Now, it's not a cross. It's an upright stake, a single piece of timber, not two. Not in any passage, by the way. There's not a single passage that ever identifies an actual cross. That's an English translation of the Greek word steros, which is always a stake, a single piece of wood, usually pointed on the end, but not always. And Yahusha was attached to one of those. It's called a tree, but appropriately so. So anyway, watch our videos on the cross and the Greek stake, and we cover that well. This is clear that a singular man was hanged on a tree and, well, caused Yahuwah to react against those who executed him. That's pretty severe. It's pretty serious when he reacts. This is Yahusha and no one else. There's really no other fit to this, and you'll see as we go through. Again, they tried to change the language in their addition to frame this as Pharisees being persecuted. All those poor guys who point fingers at everybody, who accuse and blame, and really are the most racist of people in all of history. Yeah, those guys, yeah. When they were the persecutors. But hey, they do that today, so we shouldn't be surprised. Absolutely disgusting when you think about it, though. This is the Dead Sea Scrolls. These should be preserved. These should be curated in such a manner that regardless of their religious belief, they should leave that out and just get the text out there, get the translation out there, and they don't. They just don't. They can write whatever commentaries they want, but they're not just writing commentaries. This is Giza Verms, and the text is changed. It's been added to right there, and that is fraud. Yahuwah is against the Pharisees, Sanhedrin, and the furious young lion here. That's what it says. Pilate is the furious young lion. For doing what? For executing Yahusha. But that's fulfilling prophecy. It's okay, right? Oh, yeah, right. Go look at Assyria. They paid a price, even though it was prophecy, for them to take the lost tribes captive. Go look at Babylon. Babylon was destroyed, though it was prophecy that they would take the southern kingdom captive. They still get theirs, okay? That's the way the Bible works. We serve a just and righteous Elohim. This is not a minor occurrence here. Yahusha responds to this singular man's execution. And how was he executed? Being hanged on a tree. Now go find where else in the Bible before Yahusha that a man was hanged of any significance, that a man was hanged on a tree. Yeah, there are people who are cursed, who in fact were criminals or traitors that were hanged on a tree. Yes, they don't count because Yahuwah would call that justice. See, this wasn't, and this has to be Yahusha. He's the only fit. There's no one else. This text dates itself, and we'll talk about the really bad guess from a Pharisee, which has a margin of error included that they just kind of try to ignore. But we'll show you these things have been tested now, and they're pretty confident that a lot of these guesses, well, they're not quite accurate. They're not bad. They're not that far off. They might be 100 or 200 years off. That's not bad when you're going back 2,000 years, but they treat them in scholarship, in fraud, as if those are actual scientific datings, and they are not. This notes, this was done formally. Ooh, how about that? Now that means what? That this text was written after this execution, after Yahusha's execution in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Wow. You mean that community knew? Oh, you wait for the next video when we track the Levites and we're going to find, did they in fact follow Yahusha? And that's going to be awesome. You wait. Now let's take a look at just how, well, uneducated this is on the side of the Pharisees, who then make claims and treat this as fact and then move forward with it as if it is. It would be okay if they move forward with it. There's no problem with that as long as they're honest and say, well, this could really date anywhere from, 100 BC to 50 or 100 AD, really. So it's some event that happened somewhere in that 2-century period. That would be honest. They're not being honest. They're lying to us, saying it's 50 to 1 BC. Why 1 BC? Because then it could be Messiah. See, that's what they're doing. And again, it's a guess. It's not science. Giza Verms writes in his commentary. Yes, I know somebody's going to say, paleography is a scientific discipline. Yes, we are aware. And it's guessing. And it may be educated in some time, at some points. But it is not an exact science. And that's what we mean. Now, so Giza Verm writes in his commentary, notice what he forgets when looking at this, because again, it's been framed in that way to, well, make it, put a blindfold on him, and he just doesn't take it off. He leaves it on. He's cool with it. Good for him. I guess maybe, maybe ignorance is bliss. No. Whoever said that was ignorant. Anyway, because he thinks that the Pharisees who guessed at the date would, of course, well, he forgot, they hate Messiah, so they would certainly make sure to date this just, so he just doesn't quite fit in there, right? It's called gullible, naive, and lots of other words. It certainly isn't scholarship. And he should have questioned that from the get-go, coming from a different religion that isn't even a biblical one for that matter. But, hey, that's his problem, not ours. Substantial remains of a Nahum commentary were retrieved from Cave 4. They cover parts of chapters 1 and 2 of the biblical book and the first 14 chapters of chapter 3. Their historical significance has been discussed in chapter 3. It is worthy of note that the commentator employs not only cryptograms, Katim, Furious Young Lion, etc. Indeed, he does, and that's not really that cryptic when you understand, a lot of these things, especially when they're repeated over and over in the Dead Sea Scrolls. These aren't shockers at all. But the actual names of 2 Greek kings. Oops, well, no, not in terms of what we're talking about, not at all. Demetrius and Antiochus, except for both of them, are gone by this era that this is supposedly dated from 50 to 1 BC. Doesn't he know that? Doesn't he read his own writing? That's pretty bad. Anyway, so the Greeks are gone and Rome is in power. So forget the Greeks there that he mentions. I don't know why. Rome is the Katim, period. And it is many times in the Dead Sea Scrolls. No doubt about that. That is poor, and no wonder he can't, figure this out and ends up leading to really the hiding of this incredible revelation that's been sitting right there. Yahusha is found. His crucifixion is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, written about the period that it happened concurrently. Wow. This is amazing. When you think about it, this is incredible. Now, reference to the furious young lion as one who hangs men alive. Well, gee, who could that be in the Roman era? Well, how about the Romans? How about Pilate? He doesn't even ask that question. He doesn't even go there because he's buying the Pharisee stupid date. Shows that hanging, probably a synonym for crucifixion, really probably, wait till you read further, it most definitely is, even though crucifixion is the wrong word for it, but hanging on a tree is right there, so yeah, not real smart there. Was practiced as a form of execution? Well, yes, it was, and we cover that in the Greek stake and the cross. And in fact, it continued to be a stake even 100 years after Yahusha. In many cases, maybe we'll cover the archaeology found, because there's only one find of a crucified victim in Israel, dating around that era. And I think maybe we'll cover that. That's a fascinating thing. You'll like that. As if it is not more descriptive, right? I mean, because we read further. This is one man hanged on a tree. What man is it? Now, wouldn't you go back 2,000 years ago and say, gee, who was hanged on a tree? Who does Scripture say was hanged on a tree in that era? Gee, I can't figure it out. It's just so hard. It is for these guys, evidently. He doesn't even think of it. Does he not know the many scriptures in which Yahusha is referred to as exactly that? Nothing in this fragment speaks of the temple scrolls he mentions. Just for a trader within their community, yet he stupidly injects that. And why? Why? I mean, he just doesn't get it. And we see this with Giza Vermes. We see it with Martinez and some of the others who've handled the Dead Sea Scrolls, even on the Catholic side. And wow, have they just messed up big time. Terrible. And of course, they're following Pharisees. That's the biggest problem. And that's who's in charge of that whole discipline today. The enemies of the Dead Sea community are in charge of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah. It is also legislated for in the Temple Scroll, where it is the capital punishment reserved for traitors. Yes, indeed, but impertinent. It has nothing to do with this. This is the evil man hanging this one individual on a tree, and then Yahuwah responds. Now wait, in the Temple Scroll, it is actually repeating Deuteronomy, I believe it is, but somewhere in Torah, it's repeating that cursed is a man who hangs on a tree, and talks about that as punishment for certain crimes. Now, that's Bible. And the Temple Scrolls are basically repeating the Bible in essence. And this guy doesn't know the Old Testament clearly. I'm not sure if he can read. It very cloudy. I think maybe his glasses, anyway. In biblical law, by contrast, only the dead body of an executed criminal is to be hanged. That is displayed in public as an example. Deuteronomy, there you go, 21:21. Cursed is a man hanged on a tree indeed. And no, this passage does not say only if he is hung dead. No. And we know, wait a minute, that's another telltale sign that this is Yahusha's crucifixion. This is his execution. Very specifically, because he was not hung dead, he was hung alive. You have these big, huge keys here, and they go right over the head of this guy. And all of the Dead Sea Scroll community, evidently. I mean, why couldn't, even the likes of Dr. Michael Heiser and some of them, why couldn't they go into this stuff and figure this out? Wow. Now, so Giza Vermes is really unreliable as he forgot to test this dating to include the time of Yahusha's crucifixion. That's gross negligence. He alludes to the furious young lion. There could be two Greeks. That's kind of stupid, because he then tells you that it's dated to 50 BC or so, 50 BC to 1 BC. That doesn't work. That's the Roman period. That's not the Greek period. It's illiterate. It's inept. It certainly does not rise to even an elementary level of biblical literacy. I mean, you just can't view this any other way. This commentary is ridiculous, uneducated, and unscholarly. Taking a single furious ruler and attributing him to the wrong empire, not even in power, taking a single man hanged that was so significant, it brought a response from Yahuwah, but then trying to marry, Pharisees in as the persecuted? Hey, this guy's a loser for doing that. Again, he's the blind being led by the blind. He didn't come up with that, I'm certain. That is Pharisee leaven if we've ever seen it. These are the ones who changed the Bible and the Dead Sea Scrolls, so we wouldn't be able to understand them. That's their aim. No more. There is a dating which almost sounds intelligent and scientific. Here you go. On paleographical grounds, the manuscript is dated to the second half of the 1st century BCE. There you go. That settles it. Well, no, it doesn't, because paleography is not an exact science. It is considered a discipline by some, not by many, including us, but it most certainly is nowhere near exact in representation. It's a guessing game where, especially in the case of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a rabbi who has no business doing so, because they're not experts at all, they'll say, I think it's dated blah. Well, he doesn't know, because he's just telling you, I don't really know, but I think maybe. Well, let's make sure that it's not in the 1st century, because then maybe this man hanged on a tree could be, oh, no, we can't have it him. No, can't do that. Now, yes, some logical rationale that even sounds logical on the surface is employed sometimes, many times not, yet the conclusion is usually off. In this case, the text tells you it was written after the crucifixion. Thus, it does not date to 50 to 1 BC, period, which is not a scientific dating. Also, 30 to 40 AD, somewhere in there, the era of Yahusha's sacrifice, whatever that actual date was, is still well within the margin of error for this guess. Regardless, so to not consider that here, well, that just requires willing ignorance, as 2 Peter 3 warned in our age. We call it insanity. Now, it's not like this hasn't been studied. In a study conducted of Dead Sea Scroll fragments specifically, those especially dated only paleographically, like this fragment was, many proved to be from the Herodian period and not the Hasmonean period. In other words, in regards to this fragment, dating it to 50 to 1 BC is meaningless because, again, it's just a guess anyway. Even if it were somewhat educated, it doesn't mean it's anywhere near accurate when it comes to trying to pinpoint this down to less than a century. But still, a guess nevertheless. Is actually closer to the time of Yahusha's execution, and this qualifies as such, and they don't give you anything to disqualify it. Of course, bear in mind, even the paleographical dating has a margin of error and could have been placed in the 1st century AD regardless. So it fits no matter what. You cannot eliminate it. And the fact that Verms did and many others do, it's just, again, insanity. But here's science to support it. There you go. So basically this has been so botched by supposed scholars who are truly illiterate, willingly so. They can read, but they just act like they can't because clearly they say things that are just like, huh? You read that passage and you got that out of it? You can't read, clearly. What they're doing is they're trying to hide Yahusha here when this is so super obvious. Understand this is likely one of the latest writings in Qumran Bethabara by the exiled temple priests. Why? Well, where did they go? What happened to the Levites? Wait till you see what we have found. Next video coming very soon on this. We're going to track the Levites, and this is amazing. It's going to fill in a lot of blanks for a lot of people. This begs the question then, what did happen to the Levites? Now we know the Levitical order was disannulled and replaced by the order of Melchizedek, who is Yahusha, and was in the days of Abraham as well, only in spirit then, now in the flesh. It was a restoration, not actually new to history. It was a new covenant to the people of that time because they were in the Levitical order, and now they enter the order of Melchizedek. But the order of Melchizedek is not new. Anyone that thinks it is or says it is doesn't know what they're talking about, because Melchizedek, the order of Melchizedek, is there in place, the high priest that Abraham tithed to. Abraham. That's 400 plus years before Moses. Wow. Now, he needed to become flesh, so he transferred the priesthood to fleshly men. See how this works? So that then when he came in the flesh, John 1, and dwelt among us, he could take it back over. Now, wow. This is a huge wow. Watch the first tithe where we cover Hebrews 7 and 5. Really, there is no other way to read that New Testament scripture, just as Hebrews 4 is definitive that this Sabbath remains. Because it did, after Yahusha's ascension, they were still keeping it, and it was the same one as the seventh day. It was the same one as Moses and David. It was the same one as Yahusha, and even tells you that he preached a message where he says, come and rest, and I will give you rest, and that was about Sabbath, on the Sabbath, and it's a Sabbath sermon. Duh. It is too well worded to confuse. The book of Hebrews is probably one of the keys to understanding the entire New Testament. Did the Levites follow Yahusha? Do we really forget whom John the Baptist was? Who was he? Do you know who he was? If you don't know who he was, you'll find out in this next video. Wait a minute, is it possible as many as 6 of the 12 original disciples were what? Levites? We're going to test that. And wow is all I can say. Can we prove that? We'll see. And where did they migrate in mass from Qumran Bethabara with the southern kingdom? Well, this is documented in Scripture. It's not a shocker. It's not a surprise. It's not hidden even at all. It's only hidden in the doctrines of men, in the strong delusion in which we live. Now, we'll deal with all of this and more next. And this will be a groundbreaking, monumental video for sure. And this is going to be good. We have over 550 videos on YouTube now with alternative platforms in the description box. Please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. But since YouTube seems to be broken at times, for our channel anyway, join our email list on our website. Go to thegodculture.com. Fill in the pop-up there. Just put your email address in. That's it. We're not asking your name or anything else. And it's only so we can notify you ourselves. We have published 10 books now in 3 years, with more to come. Number 11, well on its way, in fact, soon. You can download free in eBook at ophirinstitute.com or purchase in print internationally. All links are there. Our Instagram was hacked, but is now back up. And we also started a TikTok account recently, but sorry, no dancing. Not happening. Just not. Sorry, I'm not doing it. We will also be appearing on Zen Garcia's show in the U.S. somewhat regularly, so look for that. We'll try to make announcements as we get closer. And we have some really big projects working right now. Can't wait to get them along far enough to tell you about all of them. By the way, we had launched our Solomon's Treasure, finding that Ophir is the Philippines and the Garden of Eden. in the Tagalog language, full narration or full book in Tagalog there, Filipino language. And we are working on it in other languages as well, which is really cool, dialects there. We have, in fact, we're going to be launching another book in Tagalog very soon. So that is another on the docket. So we're working on trying to continue the very first video we ever did, the very first message we ever explored and proved out and really laid down a lot of research. And we are going to continue to, no doubt. If you are Filipino and you have not explored your true history restored, watch Solomon's Gold series, read our book, The Search for King Solomon's Treasure, again in English or in Tagalog. It's available at ophirinstitute.com. And check it out because it will change your life. And so many revelations here will, no doubt. We love you guys, and we are glad you're here. Always remember, prove all things for yourself. Yah bless to everyone. About 382 AD, in the days of Jerome, known for the Latin Vulgate, a new term began to circulate in Bible scholarship, according to R.H. Charles. Certain texts of historical value, and even canon, were now labeled as something other than inspired scripture. The very concept is a clear redefining of books already in existence, and in most cases, text recorded as inspired scripture and Bible canon now somehow in question by those without any such authority. This paradigm remains today even further rooted, as if it ever represented the historical approach to these Old Testament texts, as some vet as truth. How do these texts stand up to the Torah test? The answer on many of these books will likely shock especially scholars who have never actually conducted such research, which becomes evident. It's not in their paradigm. This canon was already chosen before there were Pharisees in Jerusalem and before there was ever a Catholic Church. Those factions do not get to legitimately form councils to vote on that which was already settled fact long before, even in archaeology. You are entering a zone for truth with our new Apocrypha Test series. Follow along, and together we will dispel the myths of modern scholarship. And man, are they profoundly lacking in intellect on this topic, you will see. Not anymore. Download your copies of Volume 1 and Volume 2 of our comprehensive Apocrypha research, free in eBook today, or get your copies at apocryphatest.com. All links are there. We now begin.